Everyone thinks they understand longevity. Eat clean, sleep 8 hours, take your vitamins, hit the gym. But living longer isn't built on slogans. It's built on biology, on consistency, and understanding how the body actually works. And after a decade in emergency medicine and studying what actually separates people who live long, healthy lives from those who don't, I've realised something most people completely miss. The things we obsess over online are surface-level noise, and the biological signals that genuinely predict lifespan are sitting in plain sight, yet almost nobody is paying attention to them. So what I'm about to tell you doesn't come from wellness influencers or biohacking podcasts. This comes from decades of population research, from cohort studies tracking tens of thousands of people and the clinical markers that emergency physicians and cardiologists actually use to predict who is headed for early disease and who isn't. These signals don't lie. They reveal your biological trajectory, years, sometimes decades before symptoms appear. And if you stick around until the end, I'll reveal which single objective measurement outperforms every other physiological longevity marker that we've ever studied. Stronger than cholesterol, stronger than blood pressure, even stronger than your genetics. I'm Dr. Alex. I'm an emergency medicine doctor. And after nearly 10 years in the A&E, I've seen what happens when preventable disease isn't prevented. And my goal now is to help people avoid it in the first place and live longer, healthier lives. Okay, so starting at number 6 with something that you can measure right now, this very second. Your resting heart rate, how many times your heart beats per minute when you're completely at rest, is one of the cleanest windows into your cardiovascular health that we have. Most people think heart rate is just background data, something your smartwatch tracks but doesn't really mean anything. Well, that couldn't be further from the truth. When you look at large-scale mortality studies, the pattern is undeniable. People with resting heart rates above 80 beats per minute have a significantly higher mortality risk compared to those sitting between 50 and 70. And this isn't just correlation. The mechanism is direct. A higher resting heart rate means your heart is working harder to maintain basic function. It's pumping more frequently because each stroke is less efficient. Now, over decades, that extra mechanical stress compounds. Your heart ages faster. Just a quick one before we carry on with the rest of the video. So I see messages and comments all the time from people who've watched a few videos and didn't realize they weren't actually subscribed. So would you mind doing me a big favor and just double checking that you are subscribed? It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this and keep the whole thing moving in the right direction and helping more people like you. And if you are subscribed, then thank you very much. You're not just watching. You're now part of this story, and I really appreciate you being on the journey with me. Anyway, let's crack back on with the video and talk about the Framingham Heart Study. Okay, so the Framingham Heart Study, one of the longest running cardiovascular investigations in history, followed thousands of people, and it found that for every 10 beats increase in resting heart rate, there was a corresponding increase in cardiovascular mortality risk. Not just heart attacks, I'm talking about all-cause death. That means people with resting heart rates in the 80s and 90s were dying earlier from everything, not just cardiac events. Why? Well, because resting heart rate reflects your autonomic balance, your metabolic efficiency, and your overall systemic health. What's happening physiologically is actually quite profound. So a lower resting heart rate indicates stronger cardiac output per beat. Your heart simply fills more completely during diastole, which is the relaxation phase, and ejects more blood with each contraction. That is cardiovascular efficiency. It also reflects a parasympathetic dominance, meaning that your nervous system isn't stuck in a chronic state of activation. When your body feels safe, when inflammation is low, when metabolic stress is minimal, your resting heart rate naturally decreases. But then on the other hand, an elevated resting heart rate signals the opposite: chronic sympathetic activation, poor cardiovascular conditioning, metabolic dysfunction, sometimes thyroid issues or anemia. But most commonly, it's a reflection of deconditioning and lifestyle stress. Your heart is working overtime just to keep you alive at baseline. That's not sustainable long term. And the research here is remarkably consistent. A meta-analysis published in the European Heart Journal analysed data from over 1 million participants and concluded that resting heart rate above 80 beats per minute was independently associated with increased risk of cardiovascular disease and premature death. The relationship was dose-dependent. The higher the resting heart rate, the worse the outcome. And this held true even after adjusting for age, for blood pressure, for cholesterol, smoking, and diabetes. Resting heart rate is its own risk factor. The thing is, this isn't fixed. It is trainable. Aerobic exercise, especially moderate intensity cardio sustained over time, lowers your resting heart rate by improving stroke volume and enhancing vagal tone. Strength training helps too by reducing systemic inflammation and improving metabolic health. Even stress management practices like breathwork and adequate sleep drive resting heart rate down by shifting autonomic balance towards parasympathetic dominance. Now, there's a lot of information there, but if you do nothing else, start tracking this. Check your resting heart rate first thing in the morning before you get out of bed. If it's consistently above 75 or 80, then that's a biological signal that's worth listening to. And it's not a death sentence, it's just feedback at the moment. And unlike genetics or age, it's completely modifiable through how you move, through how you sleep, and how you eat and recover. Your resting heart rate is speaking. The question is whether you're listening to it. At number 5, we're looking at something so simple it sounds almost ridiculous. And this is how fast you walk. Not how far, not how often, just pure walking speed when you're moving at a comfortable natural pace. This is one of those measurements that clinicians have quietly been using for decades because it predicts outcomes with shocking accuracy. And yet almost no one outside of geriatric medicine pays attention to it. Walking speed integrates multiple systems simultaneously. It requires cardiovascular endurance to sustain movement, muscular strength to propel your body forward, balance and proprioception to stay upright, neuromuscular coordination to execute the movement smoothly, and cognitive function to navigate your environment. When any one of these systems starts failing, walking speed automatically drops. That's why it's such a sensitive marker of overall health. It doesn't just measure your legs, it measures your entire biology. A meta-analysis published in the BMJ examined walking speed from over 9 large cohort studies involving over 34,000 older adults. And the results were unambiguous. People who walked faster than 1 meter per second, about 2.2 miles per hour, had significantly lower mortality risk compared to slower walkers. For every 0.1 meter per second increase in walking speed, there was a corresponding 12% reduction in mortality risk. That's a huge effect size for something as mundane as walking pace. Another study tracking over 500 adults aged 70 to 79 found that those in the slowest quartile, the last 25% of walking speed, had a 3-fold higher risk of death over the follow-up period compared to those in the fastest quartile, the fastest 25%. This wasn't explained by age alone. It wasn't explained by chronic disease. Walking speed was an independent predictor. People who walked slowly were dying earlier regardless of their medical diagnoses. So what on earth is driving this? Well, as I hinted earlier, walking speed reflects physiological reserve. It's a proxy for how much functional capacity you have left in the tank. When your cardiovascular system is efficient, your muscles are strong, your nervous system is coordinated, and your metabolism is stable. You walk fast without thinking about it. But as those systems degrade through inactivity, through chronic disease, inflammation, or even just aging, your walking speed slows down. You start shuffling. You start needing more time to cross the street. That's not just inconvenient, it's a biological red flag. Now, the cardiovascular component is particularly important here. Walking speed above 3 miles per hour requires your heart to deliver sustained oxygen to working muscles. If your cardiac output is impaired, if your mitochondria are dysfunctional, if your insulin resistance is preventing glucose from being efficiently used for energy, you physically cannot maintain a fast walking pace. Your body just simply won't let you. Walking speed is an honest reporter of your metabolic and cardiovascular health. And as well as that, walking speed predicts functional decline and disability. People who walk slowly are more likely to lose independence, require assistance with daily activities, and experience falls and fractures. Once functional decline begins, it accelerates. You move less because it's harder. Because you move less, you get weaker. Because you get weaker, you move even less. And that's the frailty spiral. And walking speed is one of the earliest detectable signs that it's starting. The thing is, this is entirely trainable. Strength training improves the power output of your legs, which directly increases walking speed. Cardiovascular training improves your aerobic capacity, allowing you to sustain faster paces without fatigue. Balance exercises reduce fall risk and improve gait mechanics. Even just walking more, progressively pushing your pace slightly faster than comfortable, trains your system to adapt. If you're in your 40s, your 50s, or your 60s, and you've noticed that your natural walking pace has slowed down, then please don't ignore it. That is feedback. It's not normal aging. It's modifiable decline. Test yourself, walk a measured distance. 400 meters is standard in research settings, and time it. If you're taking longer than 6 minutes, then that's a signal worth addressing. Your walking speed today predicts your independence, your quality of life, and your mortality risk a decade from now, so treat it accordingly. Moving on to number 4, and we're shifting into something most people don't even know exists. So everyone talks about blood pressure. Doctors measure it all the time at every visit. You know if yours is high or low. But almost no one talks about blood pressure variability. How much your blood pressure fluctuates from reading to reading, from day to day, or even beat to beat. That variability, it turns out, predicts cardiovascular events and death independent of your average blood pressure level. Here's what the research shows. 2 people can have the same average blood pressure, say 130/80, but completely different outcomes. One person's blood pressure stays stable at that level. The other person swings between 110/70 one day and 150/90 the next day. That second person is at significantly higher risk of stroke, of heart attack, and death. The instability itself is the problem. Your cardiovascular system doesn't handle chaos well. It's built for predictability. A study published in The Lancet followed over 25,000 patients and measured visit-to-visit blood pressure variability over years and years. The researchers found that high variability was strongly associated with increased risk of stroke and coronary events, even after adjusting for mean blood pressure and traditional risk factors. In fact, people in the highest quartile of blood pressure variability had nearly double the stroke risk compared to those in the lowest quartile. That's independent of whether their blood pressure was controlled or not. So why does this happen? Well, blood pressure variability reflects underlying vascular dysfunction and autonomic stability. Your blood vessels are supposed to dynamically regulate pressure through vasoconstriction and vasodilation, tightening and relaxing in response to demand. When that regulation breaks down, pressure swings become erratic. That erratic pressure damages the delicate endothelial lining of your arteries, particularly in the brain and the kidneys, where small vessels are most vulnerable. That damage leads to microvascular disease, to white matter lesions in the brain, and increased stroke risk. As well as that, blood pressure variability is linked to arterial stiffness. Now, healthy arteries are elastic. They expand when blood surges through them during systole and recoils smoothly during diastole. That compliance dampens the pressure wave and protects the downstream tissues. But as arteries stiffen due to inflammation, to glycation, calcification, and just aging, they lose that buffering capacity. Pressure spikes become more extreme. That's why older adults and people with diabetes have higher blood pressure variability. Their vessels cannot absorb the fluctuations anymore. And then there's the autonomic component. So your autonomic nervous system constantly adjusts blood pressure in response to posture, to activity, to stress, and your circadian rhythms. When autonomic regulation is healthy, those adjustments are smooth and controlled. But chronic stress, poor sleep, insulin resistance, and inflammation All of those impair your autonomic function. The result, as I've said many times before, is dysregulation. Blood pressure shoots up during stress and then crashes during rest. That variability is a direct marker of autonomic failure. The thing is that most people never measure this. You get one blood pressure reading at the doctor's office, and that's it. But that single snapshot tells you almost nothing about variability. If you want to assess this properly, you need multiple readings over time. Home blood pressure monitoring is the gold standard. Measure your blood pressure at the same time each day for a week or two. Track the numbers, write them down, look for patterns. If your readings are swinging by more than 10 to 15 day to day, then that is worth investigating. But what drives blood pressure variability? Well, it's inconsistent sleep schedules, which disrupt your circadian regulation, chronic stress, which keep your sympathetic nervous system activated, insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction, which impair vascular reactivity, sedentary behavior, which weakens your cardiovascular system's ability to adapt to changes in demand. And the next big question is, what reduces variability? Well, it's consistent sleep-wake timing, which stabilizes circadian rhythms, regular aerobic exercise, which improves vascular compliance and autonomic regulation, stress management practices like breathwork and meditation, which enhance parasympathetic tone, dietary patterns that support vascular health, high in potassium, magnesium, and polyphenols, low in processed sodium. Blood pressure variability isn't something you treat with medication alone. It's something that you fix with a lifestyle stability. If your blood pressure is erratic, then your cardiovascular system is already under strain. That strain accelerates vascular aging and increases your risk of sudden catastrophic events like a stroke or a heart attack. Stability in health really does matter. Consistency matters. Your blood vessels need predictable pressure, not wild fluctuations. So pay attention to the pattern, not just the number. And number 3, we're circling back to something I mentioned briefly before, but it deserves its own deep explanation because the data here is overwhelming. Grip strength, how hard you can squeeze your hand around a dynamometer, is one of the most robust predictors of mortality, disability, and functional decline we have in clinical medicine. And yet almost no one tracks it, almost no one tests it. It's literally hiding in plain sight. The reason grip strength is so predictive isn't because your hand muscles are uniquely important. It's because grip strength is a proxy for total body muscle mass and neuromuscular integrity. If your grip is strong, it means you have sufficient muscle throughout your body. It means your nervous system can recruit motor units efficiently. It means you have adequate protein stores, hormonal support, and metabolic health to maintain muscle tissue. Grip strength is a window into your entire musculoskeletal system. The prospective urban-rural epidemiology study, one of the largest health studies ever conducted, tracked over 140,000 people across 17 countries for an average of 4 years. The researchers measured grip strength using a standardized hand grip dynamometer and followed participants for mortality outcomes. And the results were really striking. For every 5 kilogram decrease in grip strength, there was a 16% higher risk of death from any cause, a 17% higher risk of cardiovascular death, and a 7% higher risk of heart attack. This relationship held across all age groups, all countries, and all baseline health statuses. Now, what makes this particularly important is that grip strength predicted mortality rates better than systolic blood pressure, better than traditional cardiovascular risk scores. It was one of the strongest single predictors in the entire study. That's not because a weak grip causes death, it's because weak grip reflects systemic biological decline. When your muscles are wasting, your metabolism is dysregulated, your hormones are failing, and your nervous system is losing coordination. All of those problems show up as reduced grip strength. As well as that, grip strength predicts disability and loss of independence. Older adults with weak grip strength are significantly more likely to develop limitations in activities of daily living, things like dressing, bathing, cooking, or even climbing the stairs. And once you lose the ability to perform those tasks independently, quality of life plummets and the decline accelerates. Weak muscles lead to reduced activity. Reduced activity leads to further muscle loss. That's the sarcopenia frailty cascade, and grip strength is one of the earliest warning signs. And there is a cognitive connection to all of this. Multiple studies have found associations between low grip strength and increased risk of dementia. The mechanism likely involves shared pathways. Muscle loss and cognitive decline are both driven by chronic inflammation, by insulin resistance, mitochondrial dysfunction, and reduced physical activity. People who maintain muscle mass throughout life tend to maintain cognitive function as well. Grip strength isn't just about physical capacity. It's a marker of brain health too. The thing is, grip strength does naturally decline with age, but the rate of decline is highly variable. Sedentary people lose muscle rapidly after the age of 50. Active people maintain muscle for much longer. And people who specifically train for strength can preserve or even build muscle well into their 70s or 80s. Now, that difference in trajectory creates vastly different health outcomes. Two people who start with the same grip strength at 50 can end up in completely different functional states by the age of 70, based purely on whether they maintained muscle or lost it. Now, testing grip strength is trivial. A hand grip dynamometer costs less than 30 quid. You squeeze it 3 times with each hand and record the best result. Normal values vary by age and sex, but as a rough guide, men should be able to squeeze above 40 kilos and women above 25 kilos. If you're significantly below that, then it's worth addressing. If you're above that, the goal is simply to maintain it. But what actually builds grip strength? Well, direct grip training does help. Things like farmer carries, dead hangs, heavy kettlebell work, but systemic strength training is even more important. Deadlifts, rows, pull-ups, or any exercise requiring you to grip and stabilize heavy loads will improve your grip strength as a byproduct. And crucially, adequate protein intake, at least 1.6 grams per kilo of body weight, is non-negotiable for maintaining muscle mass as you age. Your grip strength predicts your functional capacity, your independence, and your mortality risk 10 to 20 years from now. If it's declining, then it's not inevitable aging. That's modifiable decline. And the time to reverse it is now, not when you already fail. Grip strength, at the end of the day, isn't just a number. It's a biological report card, and it's telling you whether you're building resilience or sliding towards dependence. So in number 2, we're diving into one of the most insidious biological processes that predicts disease decades before diagnosis. This isn't about diabetes alone. This is about metabolic dysregulation at the cellular level, a process that silently damages every organ system in your body while producing almost no symptoms until it's dangerously advanced. I'm talking about insulin resistance and elevated HbA1c, 2 closely related markers that tell you whether your metabolism is stable or breaking down. So HbA1c, or hemoglobin A1c, is a measurement of how much glucose has been stuck to your red blood cells over the past 3 months. It's expressed as a percentage in the US and as millimoles per mole in the UK and much of Europe. So below 5.7% or below 39 in the UK, this is considered normal. Between 5.7 and 6.4%, or between 39 and 46 in the UK, this is prediabetes. Above 6.5% or above 48 in the UK, this is considered diabetes. But here's the crucial point that most people miss. The damage starts long before you hit the diabetic range. Even HbA1c levels in the high normal range, 5.5 to 5.7%, or roughly 37 to 39 in the UK, are associated with increased cardiovascular risk and early death. A study published in Diabetes Care followed over 45,000 people and found that those with an HbA1c level between 5.5 and 6, or 37 to 42 in the UK, had a significantly higher risk of cardiovascular disease compared to those below 5.5% or below 37 in the UK. That is well within the so-called normal range. Another analysis found that for every 1% increase in HbA1c, about 11 in the UK, the risk of coronary artery disease increased by 18%. This isn't a threshold effect, it's linear. The higher your average blood sugar, the more damage you're accumulating, even if you're nowhere near diabetic. The mechanism here is called glycation. When glucose sticks to proteins in your blood, including hemoglobin, it forms advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These molecules are sticky and inflammatory. They cross-link with collagen in your arteries, making them stiff and brittle. They damage the endothelial lining of your blood vessels, triggering atherosclerosis. They accumulate in your kidneys, in your eyes, and in your nerves, causing microvascular complications. Glycation is simply one of the core drivers of biological aging, and HbA1c directly reflects how much of it is happening. As well as that, insulin resistance, which is the underlying metabolic dysfunction that drives elevated blood sugar, is toxic in its own right. Insulin resistance means your cells stop responding to insulin's signal to take up glucose. Your pancreas compensates by secreting more insulin. For years, sometimes decades, this can work. Your blood sugar stays normal because your insulin is chronically elevated, but elevated insulin, or hyperinsulinemia, is independently harmful. It promotes fat storage, particularly visceral fat. It raises your blood pressure, it increases inflammation, it accelerates atherosclerosis, it increases cancer risk by promoting cell proliferation. A meta-analysis of 65 different studies involving over 500,000 people found that insulin resistance was strongly associated with cardiovascular disease, with type 2 diabetes, and all-cause mortality. People in the highest quartile of insulin resistance had more than double the risk of cardiovascular death compared to those in the lowest quartile, even after adjusting for BMI, for cholesterol, and blood pressure. Insulin resistance is an independent risk factor. It's not just a symptom of obesity, it really is a driver of disease. Then there's the metabolic syndrome constellation. So insulin resistance sits at the center of a cluster of conditions: elevated triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, high blood pressure, central obesity, and elevated fasting glucose. Now, when you have 3 or more of these, you have metabolic syndrome, which dramatically increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, and early death. Roughly 30% of adults in developed countries meet the criteria. That's a public health crisis driven by ultra-processed foods, sedentary behavior, and chronic stress. Now, the thing is, HbA1c and insulin resistance are both modifiable. They respond to lifestyle intervention faster than almost any other biomarker. So what drives them up? Well, refined carbohydrates and added sugars, which spike blood glucose repeatedly throughout the day, is the main one. Ultra-processed foods engineered to bypass satiety signals, sedentary behavior which reduces muscle glucose uptake, chronic sleep deprivation which impairs insulin sensitivity by about 30% or more after just a few nights, chronic stress which elevates cortisol and drives gluconeogenesis. But what drives them down? Well, whole foods, particularly those rich in fiber, which slow glucose absorption and improve insulin sensitivity. Strength training, which increases muscle mass and increases more glucose uptake. High-intensity interval training, which depletes glycogen stores and forces your body to become more efficient at clearing glucose. Time-restricted eating, which gives your insulin levels time to drop and your cells time to restore sensitivity. Quality sleep, which resets metabolic hormones. Stress management, which reduces cortisol and stabilizes your blood sugar. If you're not tracking your HbA1c, then you really are flying blind. It's one of the most important biomarkers that you can measure, and it's available on most standard blood panels that we do in the UK. If your HbA1c is creeping above 5.5 in the US or above 37 in the UK, then that's a signal. It's not a diagnosis, it's a signal. It means that your metabolism is under strain, and if you don't intervene now, you'll cross into prediabetes, then diabetes, then full metabolic collapse. The time to act isn't when you're diagnosed. It's when the signal first appears. HbA1c and insulin resistance are predictive years before disease manifests. So that is your window, so use it. So we've reached number 1 on the list, and this is the biological signal that outperforms every other physiological measurement that we've discussed. Not just marginally, but overwhelmingly. If you could track only one single objective marker for the rest of your life to predict how long you'll live and how healthy you'll be as you age, this would be it. I'm talking about your cardiorespiratory fitness, your body's ability to deliver and use oxygen during sustained physical exertion. This is often measured through VO2 max, but it encompasses far more than just a number on a metabolic chart. Now, I need to be quite precise here. The absolute strongest predictor of longevity is actually social connection and the quality of your relationships. This comes from the Harvard study of adult development and decades of population research. Social isolation is as harmful as smoking 15 cigarettes a day, but that's not a biological marker that you can measure in a lab or on your watch. It's not something that you can track with a device or a blood test. When we're talking about objective, quantifiable physiological signals, the kind of data that doctors can measure, that we can monitor and use to predict disease risk, cardiorespiratory fitness stands alone at the top. Cardiorespiratory fitness isn't like other biomarkers. It's not a blood test. It's not a genetic marker. It's a functional measurement of how well your entire physiology performs under stress. And when researchers analyze mortality data from large populations, cardiorespiratory fitness emerges as the single most powerful objective predictor of death. Stronger than age, stronger than smoking, stronger than hypertension, stronger than cholesterol, than diabetes. That's not hyperbole, that's what the data shows. A landmark study from the Cleveland Clinic analysed exercise data from over 122,000 patients collected over more than 20 years. The researchers followed these patients for mortality outcomes and stratified them by fitness level. And the results were absolutely extraordinary. People in the lowest fitness category, the bottom 20%, had nearly 5 times the mortality risk compared to those in the top 20%. Even people in the second lowest fitness category had more than double the mortality risk. The relationship between fitness and mortality was inverse, continuous, and incredibly strong. But here's what really shocked the medical community. There was no upper limit to the benefit. The fittest individuals, those with elite-level cardiorespiratory capacity, had the lowest mortality risk, and the benefit kept on scaling. Even among people who were already fit, getting fitter still reduced mortality. That's different from most other risk factors where the benefit plateaus. With fitness, more is always better. There's no point where additional fitness stops protecting you. What makes this even more remarkable is that cardiorespiratory fitness predicted mortality across all subgroups. Young, old, male, female, diabetic, non-diabetic, hypertensive, normotensive, it just didn't matter. Low fitness was universally harmful. High fitness was universally protective. And here's the thing, being unfit was a stronger predictor of death than being diabetic, being a smoker, or having cardiovascular disease. Low fitness was the deadliest objective condition in the entire study. So why is cardiorespiratory fitness so powerful? Well, because it reflects integrated systemic health at every level. When you measure your VO2 max, the maximum volume of oxygen that your body can utilize, you're assessing the coordinated function of multiple organ systems working in harmony. Your lungs have to extract oxygen from the air efficiently. Your blood vessels then have to deliver that oxygen to working tissues without excessive resistance. Your muscles have to contain enough mitochondria, the cellular powerhouses, to use that oxygen for energy production. Your metabolism has to efficiently convert fuel into ATP without creating excessive waste products. When any of these systems fails, your fitness drops. That's why cardiorespiratory fitness is such a sensitive marker. It's not measuring just one isolated variable, it's measuring the sum total of your body's functional capacity. Low VO2 max doesn't just mean your lungs are weak, it could mean that your cardiac output is compromised. It could mean that your blood vessels are stiff and atherosclerotic. It could mean that your mitochondria are dysfunctional. It could mean that you're insulin resistant and you can't efficiently fuel your muscles. It's a systems level failure detector. As well as that, cardiorespiratory fitness is a direct reflection of biological age, not chronological age. Two people who are both 50 years old can have radically different fitness levels. One might have the VO2 max of a sedentary 70-year-old. The other person might have the VO2 max of an active 35-year-old. Their biological trajectories are completely different. The fit person is aging slowly. Their cells are efficient. Their cardiovascular system is resilient. Their metabolic machinery is optimized. Whereas the unfit person is aging rapidly. Their systems are degrading. Their reserve capacity is depleted. And those trajectories predict not just lifespan, but health span. And then there's the metabolic component again. High cardiorespiratory fitness is strongly associated with insulin sensitivity, with systemic inflammation, healthy lipid profiles, and optimal mitochondrial function. All of these factors protect against chronic disease. People with high fitness have dramatically lower rates of heart disease, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and metabolic syndrome. It's not just that fit people live longer, they live healthier. They compress morbidity, meaning they stay functional and independent until very late in life and then decline rapidly, rather than suffering through decades of progressive disability. A study following over 17,000 people for more than a decade found that those who maintained or improved their fitness over time had significantly lower mortality compared to those whose fitness declined. Even people who started with low fitness but improved it reduced their mortality risk by 50% or more. That is a staggering effect. It means fitness isn't deterministic. You're not stuck with the genetics that you're born with. You can change your trajectory at any age. The thing is, fitness is trainable even in older adults. People in their 70s and 80s can improve their VO2 max through structured exercise. The adaptations happen quickly. Within weeks of starting aerobic training, mitochondrial density increases in muscle tissue. Your heart stroke volume improves, meaning it pumps more blood per beat. Oxygen extraction at the tissue level becomes more efficient as capillary density increases. And those physiological improvements translate directly into reduced mortality risk. But what builds cardiorespiratory fitness? Well, Zone 2 cardio is the foundation. Sustained aerobic exercise at 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. This is the intensity where you can still hold a conversation, but you're breathing harder than normal. Zone 2 training builds mitochondrial density. It improves fat oxidation and enhances your aerobic base. It's the metabolic infrastructure that supports all higher intensity work. Most people skip this. They go straight to high intensity training because it feels harder and it burns more calories. But without a strong aerobic foundation, high intensity work becomes unsustainable. High intensity interval training, or HIIT, which is short bursts of maximal or near maximal effort followed by recovery periods, pushes your VO2 max higher by forcing your cardiovascular system to adapt to peak oxygen demand. HIIT creates a stimulus that Zone 2 alone cannot replicate. It improves your heart's maximum stroke volume. It increases your lactate threshold and trains your body to buffer metabolic byproducts more efficiently. Both Zone 2 and HIIT matter. Both of them drive adaptations. So a complete fitness program includes both of them. Strength training supports cardiorespiratory fitness indirectly by maintaining muscle mass, which is where oxygen gets consumed during exercise. More muscle means greater metabolic capacity. It also improves insulin sensitivity, which allows glucose to fuel exercise more efficiently, and it prevents the age-related muscle loss that would otherwise limit your ability to sustain cardiovascular training as you get older. All three modalities, Zone 2, HIIT, and strength training, work synergistically. The science here is unambiguous. Among objective, measurable, physiological markers, cardiorespiratory fitness is the most powerful biological predictor of lifespan that we have. It's more predictive than your genetics. It's more predictive than your cholesterol. It's more predictive than your blood pressure. It's more predictive than your body weight or your BMI. And unlike those factors, it's entirely modifiable through behavior. You can change your fitness, you can change your mortality risk, you can change your biological trajectory. That's what makes this so powerful. It's not deterministic, it's a signal that you can actively improve starting today. If you take one thing away from this entire video, it should be this. Prioritize your cardiorespiratory fitness above all other objective health markers. Not because it's trendy or cool, not because it makes you look good, but because among the biological signals that we can actually measure and track, it's the strongest predictor of how long you'll live and how well you'll age. Track it, test it, improve it. Your fitness level today determines your disease risk a decade from now. It determines whether you'll be independent or dependent in your 70s and 80s. It determines whether you'll compress morbidity or suffer through the years of declining health before death. This is the objective signal that matters the most, and it's the one that most people completely ignore. So let me just end with this. Most people chase surface metrics. They track weight, they obsess over supplements, they measure sleep scores and glucose spikes and inflammation markers. All of that has value, but the objective signals that genuinely predict lifespan, the ones that doctors and researchers trust when they analyze population data, are simpler and more fundamental. Your resting heart rate reflects your cardiovascular efficiency and autonomic balance. Your walking speed shows whether you're maintaining systemic resilience or sliding towards frailty. Blood pressure variability exposes vascular dysfunction before symptoms appear. Grip strength mirrors your total muscle mass and neuromuscular integrity. HbA1c and insulin resistance reveal metabolic dysregulation decades before disease. And finally, cardiorespiratory fitness, the strongest objective signal that we can measure, predicts mortality better than any other physiological marker that we've ever studied. Those aren't flashy biomarkers. They're not sold in supplement stores or promoted by wellness influencers. They are just honest reflections of whether your biology is thriving or declining. And the profound thing about every single one of them is that they are modifiable. None of them are fixed. None of them are purely genetic. They are all shaped by how you move, how you sleep, eat, recover, and manage stress. That means that you have power. You can measure these signals right now. You can see where you stand, and you can change your trajectory starting today. Longevity isn't built through extreme interventions. It's built through fundamental physiological health maintained over decades. It's built through systems that keep your cardiovascular system efficient, your metabolism stable, your muscles strong, and your nervous system resilient. The people who live the longest aren't the ones who optimize the hardest. They're the ones who build lives where health emerges naturally from their daily patterns. And when you track the right signals, you can see whether you're on the right path or not. And if you found this video useful, then please give it a like, hit the subscribe button to help it reach more people like you, and I'll see you in the next one.